Well, hello everyone. Welcome. We have an exciting topic to discuss in this live stream today. I'm going to give everyone a few minutes or just a couple of seconds actually to join. And while we do that, why don't you say hi in the chat? Let us know where you're joining from. Tell us what your favorite feature of MongoDB is. And while you're doing that, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Jesse. I'm a senior developer advocate at MongoDB. You might also know me from my YouTube channel, Code Stacker. And I live in Texas. And my favorite feature is the aggregation pipelines. So let's see how many people we've got. 34, 35 people in right now. Awesome. Anyone want to say hi in the chat? Go ahead and do that. I'll give just another couple of seconds to join. And then also, one thing is, if you're not subscribed to the channel, you're not going to see the chat feature. So go ahead and subscribe to the channel so that you can chat with us, so that you can ask questions later on. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Today we have a special guest. We have Steven Tey from Vercel. So welcome to the stream, Steven. How are you? Why don't you give us a quick introduction?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Steven. I am a senior developer advocate at Vercel, and I'm also based in Texas. I'm based in Dallas, so not too far from you.
Awesome.
What I do on a day-to-day basis at Vercel is basically a combination of engineering, content creation, and customer success, and also product management. So what I basically build starter kits that addresses user problems. That if user wants to build a SaaS application, we'll build a starter kit for that. And yeah, that's basically what I do.
Awesome. I've seen a bunch of the starter kits that you've built, and one in particular we're going to look at a little bit later today. They're awesome. Great work.
Thank you.
And so again, it's great to have you on. And so let's get into the content of today's live stream. We're going to get started out with some slides, but I promise we're not going to bore you with too many slides. We're going to have a really cool demo after the slides. So we're going to discuss leveraging the new Streamlined Vercel and MongoDB Atlas integration. It's a really cool feature, and we're excited to walk you through it today. And so for the agenda, we're going to have our introductions. Obviously, we already did the introductions. So after that, we're going to talk about what Vercel is, how it can help you manage and deploy your applications. Then we're going to get into the Vercel MongoDB Atlas integration. We're going to demonstrate a really cool MongoDB Starter Kit. And then we're going to leave some time at the end for some questions from the audience. And with that in mind, we do have some help behind the scenes. We can't do this alone. We have Katrina, our producer, Anaya and Nick, our chat moderators. And so say hi to them, thank them in the back. We also have Nazi. I forgot to mention her as well. And so say hi and thank them in the chat. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. If they can be quickly answered, we'll do that in the chat. If not, we'll save those answers to the end and we'll answer them live. And so let's get into the content now. So Steven, what is Vercel?
I'm so glad you asked. Vercel is a developer platform that combines the best developer experience with an obsessive focus for end user performance. So whether you are a developer team at a startup or at a Fortune 500 company, our platform gives you the ability to develop, preview, and ship powerful and scalable applications. Speaking of develop, preview, and ship, on the developer experience side of things, the Vercel platform gives you a workflow that is seamless and it starts directly from your terminal. So say you want to deploy a new version of your website. All you got to do is push a commit to Git and Vercel will take care of the rest, whether it's provisioning resource clusters, populating caches, or assigning SSL certificates. And at the end of that, you get a preview link that you can share with the rest of your team to get feedback on. We also offer collaborative features such as the ability to leave feedback directly in the link itself that's tagged to whatever HTML element that you're trying to leave feedback on, and also team controls, which is a way for you to limit access to external collaborators, which can come in handy if you're working a lot with external agencies. On the other side of the equation, which is end user performance, we emphasize a lot on allowing developers to build applications that are dynamic but are served at the speed of static applications. And with the way we do that is last year during the Next.js conference, we released this thing called the Nexus Middleware, which is a way for you to run code and server-side logic at a very close proximity to the user themselves. So to give an example, I'm originally from Malaysia. So if I were to request a resource or a function from Malaysia, the traditional approach is for the request to go all the way back to US East in Virginia, and then go all the way back to Malaysia. But with Edge functions, you, instead of going to US East, you can go directly to Singapore, which is much closer to Malaysia, and get the response back pretty much instantaneously. That way, you save a lot on you save a lot of time for the end user, and also cost for the developer themselves, because you're not wasting time going back and forth between from two different sides of the globe. We also created Next.js, which is a React framework that allows developers to build some of the fastest applications with very little configuration. It has over 3 million downloads a week, and it's used by some of the most amazing companies in the world that we're all familiar with, such as Target, Nike, Netflix, TikTok, etc. Speaking of amazing companies, I'm going to hand the mic back to Jesse, who's going to tell us a little bit more about MongoDB and how it fits into the serverless world.
Awesome. Yeah, Vercel is amazing. I use Vercel and Next.js like every day. And so I love working alongside it. And so we think that Vercel and MongoDB make such a great pairing. And so let's talk a little bit about MongoDB. So MongoDB's developer data platform, Atlas, has many great capabilities. Like you can see in the graph here, it has built-in Lucene-powered search. It has transactional and analytical capabilities, multi-cloud resilience and security. And we also announced serverless instances along with the new data API, which allows you to use HTTPS endpoints to query your data. And so that's super, super awesome. And so the MongoDB developer data platform provides the perfect hosted database with all of that great tooling and all of those built-in features. But that's just one small part of the puzzle for your entire application. You still have to figure out so many other things like monitoring, observability, CI/CD, front-end, API services, and so much more to complete your entire application. And so wouldn't it be so nice to just have all of that delivered for you in a model that's easy to use and get the complexity out of the way? And so that's why we've paired with Vercel. And Vercel is a leading front-end development platform that allows you to develop, preview, and ship front-end applications end-to-end with ease. And so together, Vercel and MongoDB deliver on that promise of full-stack serverless development. And so next, what we're going to do is we're going to dive into the MongoDB Starter Kit demo, and we're going to deploy it live in just a few seconds. And so, Steven, you want to take us through that?
Let's do it. Before that, I'd love to also speak to what you mentioned about Lucene search. I'm a huge fan of the fuzzy search feature that Mongo offers. When I first used it to build this application, actually, I was pretty mind blown the way you guys implemented that pretty seamlessly, and I'm a huge fan of it. So just wanted to say kudos.
Love it.
So yeah, here we have it's called the MongoDB Starter Kit, but it's basically a developer directory that has over 500 developers, and it uses MongoDB's Atlas search feature, as well as Vercel's incremental static regeneration feature. And I'm going to go into both of that a little bit throughout the demo. But the first one, so Atlas search, how that works is, for example, if I want to search for my manager, Rob at Vercel, and I make a typo, I make an extra E, it still works. It still gets me the result, and I get his profile. And going back to what I mentioned earlier about incremental static regeneration, it's basically a way for you to serve static pages, but also preserve the capability to invalidate the cache whenever you want. And it's also invalidated on a per key basis. So here we can see we have a bunch of developer pages. They are all under /developer, their username. And it's all cached. So it's all really quickly you can access them. But for example, if I go to my profile, and if I were to change my profile, I'm going to go ahead and say, hello from MongoDB webinar, and a bunch of exclamation marks. And if I save that, what's happening behind the scenes is it triggers this revalidate function that invalidates the cache globally, such that if someone now from Malaysia is trying to access this page, they'll see the updated version, which has this little tagline there. We'll talk about the code a little bit later when we show the code. But for now, let's go ahead and try and clone and deploy this application into your Vercel account in just a couple of minutes.
Yeah, awesome.
So let's click clone and deploy. This will bring us to Vercel. I'm going to go ahead, create a Git repository. I'm going to call that Mongo Starter Kit. Can't type today. Create that, and what happens? Oops, it's already available. I'm going to call it 2. So what happens right now is it basically clones the repository that is located right here into your own GitHub account. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to add the MongoDB integration. And this is where the magic happens, because all I need to do is sign into my MongoDB account, and the integration will basically take me through the process of creating a new Atlas organization, enabling this integration. And then lastly, we're just going to add this project and create a cluster. And that's it.
Nice.
This will then take us back to Vercel, where we can now start the deploy flow. Before that, we're going to go ahead and generate a random secret. I'm going to refresh a couple times. Get a random secret, and this is going to be used for NextAuth, which is the auth library that we're using for people to basically connect and log into their GitHub accounts on this application. Mm-hmm. So yeah, awesome. Now that this should deploy in just a couple of seconds. While that's happening, we can talk a bit more about NextAuth if you're interested.
Yeah, for sure. How does that work?
So NextAuth is an authentication framework that's open source, and it's built on top of Next.js that allows you to integrate with a ton of different providers like, Google, Auth0, Facebook, GitHub, even MailChimp, Reddit, whatever. And it's maintained by a pretty large community. Has over 400 active contributors, over almost 12,000 stars in GitHub. So it's a pretty well-maintained framework. And it also gives you the ability to do SAML, SSO, if you're going down the enterprise route. So it's a pretty convenient open source framework for you if you're using Next.js.
Nice. And so just kind of like recap this, you were in your Vercel dashboard basically, and you created this new project, and you just created a new cluster on MongoDB and connected that without even having to go to MongoDB. Like you just did all that from Vercel. That's amazing.
Exactly. It's all happening from Vercel, and now it's importing. As you can see, it's downloading all the packages, generating all the fake user accounts. We're using Faker.js to create these accounts, and it's deployed. There you have it.
Nice.
Confetti.
I love the confetti. I love it. Like it's just working with Vercel and Next.js is just like fun all the time.
It's these little things that brings the developer experience to the next level. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on the demo. Sorry, not the demo, the deployed application. As you can see here, I have my own link, MongoDB Starter Kit 2. And all these pages, these are fake profiles, but they're all statically generated and cached at the edge. So yeah, we can also go back to the dashboard. I'm going to show you exactly where the integration did its magic. It basically created this MongoDB Uri, which is a connection string that is generated after you provision a cluster on MongoDB.
Awesome. And so what that did, it's amazing because it set up your cluster in MongoDB. It set up your user authentication and your network authentication, and it gave you your connection string. It put the connection string as a MongoDB Uri in your Vercel dashboard, and it did all of that without ever having to touch MongoDB. I mean, it did all that automatically on the back end, right?
Yeah, it's really
crazy. Yeah.
You can obviously go back to MongoDB to see like what the stats are, how much requests you're getting per second. But for starters, you don't really need to worry about anything like that. You can just go straight, get the application up and running. If you want to look into the code, you can just go back to GitHub, or you can open up your local VS Code or something. Speaking of the code, though, I would love to check out the code. And I learned this really cool trick that Jesse taught me yesterday. So click on, was it period?
Yeah, period. Any GitHub repo, just hit period.
Oh my God.
It starts VS Code in your browser.
This is nuts. I don't know how they did it, but it just transforms the whole GitHub repo into VS Code, which is amazing. So this is the code base. We're going to first talk about the helper function. that MongoDB created for you to basically access your MongoDB database in a serverless environment. So in this case, you can see we're importing the MongoDB client from MongoDB library. We're accessing the MongoDB Uri string. If you're doing this locally, you'll have to pull the environment variable from your Vercel account. You can either just copy paste if you want to be simple, or if you want to use the terminal, you could do vc env pull. Anyways, I'm digressing a little bit. Yeah. But here's the string, and then it basically generates a promise that is shared across all the different connection instances in your application. So if you're doing this locally, each instantiation of the connection, when you do a hard reload, it shares the same connection promise. So you don't run into like connection limits. And it's the same thing happens when you deploy it to production as well.
Yeah, this library is it's super important that you get it right here, because if this isn't done correctly, then you're going to run into connection issues. And so again, this is going to cache that connection so that it can be used throughout your application later.
100%. So we're going to also take a look at the revalidate function that I mentioned earlier, that basically allowed me to edit my profile and have it statically cached again globally. So as you can see here, when someone does a pull request to the user endpoint, if they're editing their bio, for instance, what we do when the bio is successfully updated is we call a revalidate function. Here it's called unstable revalidate because it's still in beta. I think it's changed now, if I'm not mistaken. I probably should refactor this, but basically it calls a revalidate function that revalidates on the specific username's route. And the cache is only invalidated for that user and not everyone else.
That's awesome.
And it's worldwide. Sorry.
Yeah. I learn something every day as well. This is just amazing stuff.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so now that we're done with the demo, I believe it's time for the next part, which is we're going to talk learn more about MongoDB, correct?
Yeah. Where you can learn more, where you can learn more about MongoDB at the upcoming .local, which is in San Francisco on October the 20th. So you can click the link in the description to sign up for that. If you're in the San Francisco area, it's completely free, by the way. So if you're available and you want to attend that, and then where could we learn more possibly about Vercel, Steven?
Yeah, so to learn more about Vercel, you could go to the starter kit itself. I'm going to go back to the .com, but you can go to the starter kit itself, try it out for yourself. Feel free to clone and deploy. And if you have any questions, you can log an issue right here. I have to tend to the 5 issues that are out there. Or you could ping me on Twitter as well. My name is Steven Tey on Twitter. But then if you want to learn more about Next.js in general and the serverless ecosystem, we are organizing the Netcast conference that is super exciting because we have this really, really cool registration experience that I highly recommend y'all check it out. So I'm going to walk you through really quickly. I'm going to log in with my email, continue with GitHub. And then here you can see there's this prism-like monument or whatever, and there's a light ray that is coming through across the screen, which you can sort of like block, and you can start directing the light to point into the prism. And you can find, as you can see here, you can find this little, once you find that coin, you basically can solve a Wordle. It's pretty funny. There's this little coin, you gotta find it, and then you'll solve a Wordle. So yeah, that's a little plug for our conference here. Super exciting stuff. But yeah, I guess it's time for questions now.
Yeah, we can take any questions. I'm just looking through the chat, and I don't see any questions currently. So I'll just give everyone another second. If you have any questions about Vercel, about MongoDB, feel free to use the chat, and we will answer your questions. Other than that, I think this has been amazing. I love the integration with Vercel. It just makes working with Vercel projects so easy. And then again, of course, if you need to go back into any of your MongoDB clusters, of course, go to MongoDB dashboard to do that. For instance, the Lucene powered search, if you want to enable that. you'll want to go over to the dashboard, set up a search index, and go through it that way. And let's see, it looks like there might be a question. How do you make this Prism up display? Oh, he's talking about the Next.js conf. I think it's go and explore. Yeah, it's under the go and explore button.
Yeah, go and explore. You gotta log in with your GitHub account, and then you get the go and explore button, and you see the Prism from there. Oh, there, and you can also do it multiplayer too. You can type "Hello world," and people can see it. People that are in the same room as you. As you can see, there are about 4 people currently.
That's whoever's there. They're on the live stream.
And say hi.
Yeah.
Ismail, and Zach.
Awesome.
Anyway,
awesome.
I would love to also go a bit back to the database. So I'd love to show how this works. Like, as you can see here, it's already done behind the scenes. But if you want to check out how your database is doing, this is the new database. So obviously there's nothing much here, but I can go back to my organization, to the one that I'm using for the starter kit. As you can see here, there's a bunch of statistics on like what the number of connections are, how many people are trying to access it every second. And with that library function, the helper function that we showed earlier, it really helps keep the number of concurrent connections to a minimum, so you don't hit any limits until you need to scale. So yeah.
Yeah, very, very important there. It's actually, there's a question that is talking about using the MongoDB dependency. Is it effective in serverless functions? Does Vercel not need to download it every time the function is requested? I think that's kind of what we're alluding to here as well, is that caching of the connection within the MongoDB library allows you to not have to connect every single time or reconnect every single time.
Yeah.
Kind of like.
Yeah, I was this MongoDB client is imported, and the library is installed at build time. So it's basically it's cached across the builds, and all you got to do when the first connection instance is being created, it imports this client, and that's creates a promise that's being shared across all subsequent requests.
Yeah. So ideally, each client, each person in the browser is going to connect once, and that connection for that person will get reused. And that way you don't have not every time they refresh their page, it doesn't create a new connection, right? Reuses it.
Exactly. As you can see here, the connections are all pretty, it's not using too many connections because of that, the sharing feature that we're doing here.
Exactly. And then because, again, like you were saying earlier, because you're using ISR, each of those routes is being cached as well at the edge. And so it's super fast, and they're not utilizing a function every single time, only when they become invalidated, right? Is that what it's called?
Only time in this application, the only time the functions are being triggered is when I log in with GitHub. That's one. And also when I do an edit to my profile, and when I click save, that triggers another function, and that's it. So those are serverless functions that are being triggered every time this happens. But in the future, we're moving towards more of edge functions. So serverless functions versus edge functions, I can talk a bit more about that since we have time. But the difference between the two is it's pretty much, it's for you to, for simplicity's sake, you can think of edge functions as serverless functions, but they're running in the edge runtime, and they're running really close to the user. So it's the same logic. If you want to, for example, trigger the revalidate function, or if I want to do a put request, it's all supported in edge functions, but the difference is it's running in the edge runtime, which is much leaner because it uses V8s, and it's much leaner than the Node.js runtime, and it also runs at a closer proximity to user. So for example, now we're in Dallas, we're in Texas. If we trigger a function right now, it goes to the nearest node, which is in Cleveland, instead of having to go all the way to US East Virginia. So it's like, it makes all this, they call it the last mile optimizations. It's like how Amazon tackled the last mile delivery. We're tackling the last mile, performance optimizations for the user.
Yeah. So closer and faster. So why wouldn't you use it?
And it's cheaper for you too, because Node.js runtime is more heavy and it uses more resources. And edge runtime, it's way leaner, so you essentially pay lesser as well. So
Nice.
it's no.
Nice. Awesome. Well, we'll have to have you back on to do another webinar about edge functions.
Definitely, I would love to do that. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I'm not seeing any other questions. I would say, do you have any last minute things to add? Otherwise, we'll get started wrapping up.
Sure. I think I could talk a bit more about this thing called Next.js ISR, because I feel like I sort of glossed over that a little bit. But the cool thing about ISR is, in the past, if you're creating, I've spoken to a few like users that went from like a WordPress environment over to Vercel. So, for example, I think it was Algolia or Rippling. I was interviewing them for a customer story recently, but they mentioned how hard it was for them to update a static page on their website. So, say if you're going to mongodb.com/blog, I'm assuming there's a link there. Okay, thank God. So if you go to the blog and if you want to change like a typo, for example, if you spell something wrong in this blog post, traditional approaches, you gotta like rebuild the whole application. You gotta queue the build in your build pipeline, and it takes like 10 minutes to build. But with ISR, the magic happens where you're basically using a CMS to store the data in. Say if you're using MongoDB itself, or you're using like, I don't know, Sanity or something else, or Contentful, all you got to do is trigger that revalidate function using a webhook from your CMS. And that basically invalidates the cache for this single page only. And you don't have to rebuild the whole application. And based on my conversations with those users, it saves them a ton of time and allows them to iterate much faster, because marketing teams don't have to wait for engineering teams to push an entire build before they can update a page. So
yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine having to update a small page, and then you have to rebuild the entire MongoDB site in order to do this one little typo. Like that would take forever. It's just, yeah.
It's
so
pretty
yeah,
game changing in a way. I feel like sometimes I take this for granted because I work here. Like I'm like, oh man, my page is taking 2 seconds to build. That's slow. But like in reality, it's like so much harder to do this behind the scenes. And I sometimes underappreciate how much work goes behind the scenes to make this happen. So I would love for people to use this more, because it's a feature it's really powerful and underrated in a way. So that's why I want to talk about it more again.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I'll just being honest, I hate all of the back end stuff, and so I just love how Vercel makes it so easy. Like it's just all done for you. You don't have to. You just have to learn about the features, use the features correctly, and then it does all the work for you. It's amazing. There is one other question. Let's see. Is there documentation for this integration? So it looks like
Yes.
just do a search for ISR.
I believe it's under vercel.com/integrations. We have a MongoDB Atlas. It's a bit of information here.
Yeah.
But most of the information I mean, we don't really have documentation on the code for the integration itself, because it's built behind the scenes. But yeah, if you want to learn more, you can go to, I believe we have a short link for that too. I think it's vercel.link/MongoDB. Haha,
Awesome.
I got that.
There you go.
If you want to figure that,
Good guesses. There's another part of that question was, will the video for the stream be available after it's finished? Yes, the stream is going to remain live on YouTube, and you're also going to receive post-stream email if you had signed up for this webinar through the landing page in a couple of days, with some additional resources and details along with the link to this recording. Let's see. There's another question here. Is the IP access list entry for the MongoDB Atlas is it configured to 000? It is. It is configured to 000.
I remember when I first built this out, I had my IP wasn't whitelisted by using 000. So in a way, like I couldn't access it from localhost. So just make sure that you configure it to 0.00 so you can access it anywhere. Is MongoDB able to authenticate users on the edge with NextAuth? And if not, is that in the works? So NextAuth does have a MongoDB adapter. Good news. I'm going to go back to NextAuth. I'm going to close that. NextAuth. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go to documentations. I think it's adapters, not providers. Sorry. So the adapters, MongoDB, and bam, this is the one that we're using in the code as well. So they actually even have the same code that we were using, client promising. And all you got to do is inside your next auth file, I can go to my next auth file to show you, but inside the next auth file, all you got to do is specify the MongoDB adapter. And what it does is it basically, let me just go, where's my adapter? Oh, it's in API auth. So here you can see a specified MongoDB adapter. It basically wraps around the client promise that was generated earlier. And what that does is I can go back to my data actually. It basically collections. So it basically generates accounts, sessions, and users for you. It's in the same format that as NextAuth. Every time they create a new user, it has a user table, a sessions table, and an accounts table. So you can see all this, exactly, all these collections have people's I shouldn't be showing this probably, but yeah, it basically generates all the associated sessions with the user as well as the accounts that are associated with the user. So yeah, that's pretty much how that works. It's pretty nifty. I feel like I might have glossed over everything that happens behind the scenes, but that's actually a bunch of things that are happening that makes all of this possible. We're just demoing it to you in a one click deploy approach. But if you want to learn more, feel free to dive into the code. We have a bunch of comments here and there. Okay, I didn't write a comment here, but we do have comments here and there that tells you exactly what the user, how all of this works behind the scenes.
Yeah, for sure. And also with NextAuth, I believe it also supports just plain old JWT. And so that can also be used with the built-in features of MongoDB, where we have built-in user authentication as well. And so under the app services in the MongoDB dashboard, and so NextAuth can be utilized alongside that as well.
Nice.
Let's see. So I think we've got a flood of questions all of a sudden. So let's go through the next couple of questions. Is it possible to distribute the MongoDB database as well if my serverless function running close to the user, but have to make several queries to a database that is far away?
I think they're asking about globally distributing, doing replicas.
Yeah. So that kind of goes back to the setup of your database in your cluster, right? And so again, there are serverless instances available now where you can it will kind of take the closest one to you, and then if you have a dedicated cluster, again, you can pick the different regions that you need. And so that all kind of ties into how you have your database and your clusters set up.
That's really cool. Yeah, I think right now my region is configured to US East, but in an edge world, we'll make this, I guess, do replicas for this and make it global. And the cool thing about using Vercel is that if you're using edge functions, all you need to do is specify. It's the same thing as an API route, but all you need to change is add. Let me see if I can get the exact edge functions for Vercel. So all you need to add. Let me find maybe here your repo. So it's the same version as a edge function. All you need to add is this thingy. It's called export const config. You just need to add a config that says runtime experimental edge, and that will automatically make sure that your functions are being run closer to at the closest node to the user. And once that happens, if you also have multi-region configured for MongoDB, it basically you'll be able to access data. The user will be able to access data really close to their region.
Yeah. So I think the point that the point of the question is if they are getting an edge function executed, but the edge function still has to go back to Virginia every single time, it kind of doesn't help. So yes, Vercel helps to an extent, but then also MongoDB helps to the other extent, where as long as you have your cluster set up in multi-region, even multi-cloud, to get to the closest to your customer, then the edge will then use the closest region for the database.
100%. As I've been building a bunch of side projects recently, I realized how important database is on top of Vercel. or whatever like front-end hosting that you're using, because you really need to structure your database, not just from like a database configuration standpoint, but also like how it's replicated across the globe in order to have like really good performance all across the world. So I think MongoDB does incredibly well in that sense. Like it scales really well, and also it replicates really well across the globe. So it's
Awesome.
pretty cool.
Love to hear it. Love to hear that.
Some benefits of Vercel or Amplify. That's a good question. I think Vercel, as I mentioned earlier, we focus a lot on developer experience. So if you're, no matter what platform you're using out there, we would love to believe that our platform has the best developer experience, such that you don't need to worry about, making sure that your clusters are configured correctly, provisioned correctly, making sure that you can actually handle traffic at scale. Like, for example, you're doing a drop with like a big influencer, and a ton, like millions of people come to your site, and you're getting 10,000s of requests throughput per second. That's something that we see very often with some of our largest clients. And the way we have our infra set up is it allows it to be, we can basically support that really well. And you have a great developer experience. You don't have to worry about, oh, how do I set up an EC2 cluster? How do I, connect all my different AWS services?
Yeah.
It just happens behind the scenes, like what we showed you earlier. So
Exactly. Like everything in Vercel is just, it's just so easy and nice to use. So there was another question here: is serverless version in Atlas multi-region? Okay, so talking about serverless instances, is it multi-region? So serverless instances are pretty new, and they are in multiple regions. They're not in every region that a dedicated cluster is in yet. More regions are being added as it grows, as that product grows. So yes, but there's a caveat as to there's a short list right now, and more will be added.
That's awesome. Do you know what the list of countries are, like roughly off the top of your head?
I don't know off the top of my head, honestly. We could definitely follow up on that, but I don't know off the top of my head. I know that several were added recently, so
awesome.
Yeah, I know it's
I feel like the world
growing.
Yeah, this could be for our next webinar, but I feel like the world is definitely going towards an edge first world, and then edge computing is becoming more and more popular amongst all the largest Fortune 500 companies in the world. People want their content to be delivered fast, and like funny enough, I actually started my programming journey not too long ago, like about 2 years ago now. I taught myself how to code and stuff, and before that, when I was in my naive programmer phase, I would think, okay, if you're building a site, all you gotta do is get it live and that's it. But there's so many steps that come after that. How do you ensure that your sites stay up when you're pushing a new deploy? And how do you make sure that users in Argentina are actually getting the request as fast as people in New York? So the cool thing about Vercel is that we handle everything. We're forward thinking in that sense. So a lot of our new features actually address all those issues that are being faced by real users.
Exactly. I mean, building the site is just the first hurdle. You've got so many more after that, deploying it and hosting and all of that sort of stuff. And so Vercel makes all of that so simple and so easy. So again, thank you, Steven, for joining us. I really appreciate it. It's been very insightful. Learned a lot here. And any last words before we wrap up?
Nothing much. I think I just want to say thank you so much for having me again. It's my honor and pleasure. And if y'all have any questions for Vercel Next.js, you can ping me on Twitter. My name is the same as my name, just without spaces and small letters, Steven Tey. So yeah, I'm happy to hear from you guys, and hopefully you found this useful.
Awesome. All right. Thank you everyone for joining, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.